Mega Man came out in 1987, developed by Capcom for the Nintendo, and it was the company's first game ever developed specifically for a home console, rather than for the arcades. It would of course go on to spawn a whole bunch of sequels, as well as countless spin-offs, many of which spawning their own lines of a whole bunch of sequels. There are literally over 100 Mega Man games today. That's insane. And it all started right here. The long and short of the story is that Dr. Light and Dr. Wily invented some robots for the good of humanity, but then Dr. Wily betrayed Dr. Light and reprogrammed the robots for world domination. One lone helper robot resists the reprogramming and offers to be converted into a fighter, Mega Man, and it's up to him to save the day. Or something like that. It's not actually described in the game itself, only the manual, and the details are different depending on what part of the world the game was released in. Another thing that differs is the cover art. Here is the anime-style artwork used in Japan. Because some knucklehead decided Americans wouldn't be receptive to it, we got this monstrosity here in the States. I'm surprised it even sold one copy. Anyway, the setup is of course very basic, but it is serviceable enough to get the mythos of the franchise kick-started. So this game has a very unique, and at the time, innovative, presentation style. As soon as you start the game, you're given the option to choose which of the 6 stages you'd like to play, and you can complete them in any order you like. This is cool for multiple reasons. Number 1 being that it will at least allow you to see and experience many different parts of the game even if you're not very good at it, but also because the game's other hook, that you get to steal the weapon from each of the so-called robot masters at the end of each stage upon defeating them, offers replayability. Each of these weapons have their own specific purposes, strengths, and weaknesses, and while there's a commonly accepted order to play the stages in to allow for the most efficient playthrough, I'm happy that I didn't look it up online. Instead, allowing myself to find the order through trial and error like you'd have had to have done back in 1987. The only resource I used to help me was a PDF of the game's instruction manual, and I'd encourage others to do the same. Playing Mega Man is just so much more rewarding this way. So these robot masters are all pretty cool, and have memorable and creative designs. Their weaknesses are sometimes obvious, like Cutman, the guy with scissors on his head, being vulnerable to Gutsman's super arm, which gives you the ability to chuck rocks. Like in Rock Paper Scissors, which is the game that influenced this particular aspect of the Mega Man franchise. Let's talk about each of these weapons individually, though. Cutman's rolling cutter is pretty cool. It goes in an arc and can reach certain enemies that your standard arm cannon, which only shoots forward, cannot. Gutsman's super arm is the definition of situational. As previously stated, all it does is pick up these blocks and allow you to throw them, either as a weapon or just to get them out of your way and access new areas. Iceman's Ice Slasher is another standard fire straightforward weapon, but it can also freeze enemies in one spot, as well as freeze these flame pillars. Bomb Man's Hyper Bomb deals a lot of damage but takes a long time to explode, and you can't throw out more than one at a time, so making use of it is a little clunky. Fireman's Firestorm is similar to the Ice Slasher, but it also creates a periodic flaming circle around you, which doesn't protect you from hits, but does do damage to enemies. Last and certainly not least is Elecman's Thunder Beam. This thing will tear shit up, and like the rolling cutter, will reach things other weapons won't since it fires in 3 directions. It's a great way to bail yourself out if you're surrounded. So yeah, the order you get these weapons in not only plays a big role in how the boss fights will go, but will also help determine your playstyle for every part of the stage that leads up to the bosses. For instance, there's also a hidden item in the middle of Elecman's stage, the Magnet Beam, that will make many parts of the game a lot easier, but it's hidden behind blocks that can only be moved with the super arm that you get from Gutsman. This item will shoot out platforms that you can stand or run on for a few seconds before they vanish. And not only was it the only way to make the latter parts of Iceman's stage tolerable for me, more on this later, but it also allows you to avoid the flames in this part of Fireman's stage. Without the Magnet Beam, you have no choice but to take damage here. And that's only scratching the surface. The order you play the stages in will affect every aspect of the game. Anytime the OG Mega Man is discussed, much is always made about the level of difficulty. It's routinely ranked as one of the hardest games on the NES. Personally, I think a lot of this stems from the game's general popularity, because there are plenty of tougher ones on the console. That said, Mega Man is nowhere close to easy. Nearly every screen in every stage is loaded with enemies, projectiles, obstacles, bottomless pits of doom, and insta-kill death spikes. A certain level of difficulty was necessary simply because this game is very short. I don't personally consider a game being short to be a bad thing, especially if it's a fast-paced game like a run-and-gun platformer and lacks gameplay variety, because you can breeze through a stage en route to a boss in less than 5 minutes if you've got the skills. But without practice, most gamers will not have the skills. Some areas require memorization to avoid taking damage. The trial and error nature of this game extends beyond simply knowing which weapon you will need to most efficiently fight the Robot Masters. The knockback physics can be infuriating, especially in areas with the previously mentioned bottomless pits of doom and insta-kill death spikes. The game does throw you a bone, however, with post-hit invincibility, which will especially come in handy for the rumbles with the Robot Masters. More grace is extended with unlimited continues. Even after losing all of your lives, you never go all the way back to the very beginning of the game. You merely lose your checkpoint within the stage. And even if you failed to complete a stage, you still get to keep any weapons you've earned, or the magnet beam item if you found it. Power isn't restored to these items until you game over, however, or find fuel for them, which is scarce, and doesn't really fill up all that much of the meter if you do find it. Health power-ups are pretty weak too for the most part, and 1-ups are incredibly rare. Some health power-ups, fuel for your weapons, and 1-ups can be found in specific locations within the stages, but they're often a bitch and a half to get to. And because drops from enemies far more frequently only contribute to multiplying your score at the end of the stage, farming is not practical for the most part. And yes, this game does keep score, for no real reason other than that game developers at this point in time likely saw it as an obligation, in an era where arcades were still king and the concept of beating a game was still in its infancy. Some of the enemies in Mega Man are very annoying. The grinning helicopter dudes will swarm you. These armored guys in Bomb Man's stage take far too many hits, one of my gaming pet peeves. These spawns of Satan will erase a gigantic portion of your life bar in one fell swoop, and sometimes if you move the wrong way, enemies can respawn immediately. This immediate respawning is an example of the game's lack of polish. My advice to anyone giving it a go is that you'll be better off playing confidently instead of being overly cautious. When challenged, don't hesitate. Keep moving forward. Speaking of a lack of polish, it's worth it to say that most of the difficulty in this game does come from fair challenge, as the controls function like they're supposed to and everything. But occasionally some unfairness will crop up. I died a lot on my playthrough of Mega Man, and while most of the deaths were my own fault, some did feel rather cheap. There are parts of the game that will spawn you directly into a danger zone, and the beginning of the boss fight against the Yellow Devil, more on that bastard later, is a blatant beginner's trap. Check it out. If you want to beat this game, be prepared to make use of your memory. I personally think that the biggest and most noticeable flaw this overall great game has is that the difficulty is very uneven. And while that's always a bit of a problem, it is especially a problem in a game where difficulty peaks as high as it does here. For instance, the Iceman stage is an absolute nightmare all the way through because it takes every challenging aspect of the game and adds ice physics to it, while adding in more platforming than any other stage by far. These block puzzles were super frustrating to me, and not particularly fun either. and the platforming challenge that followed them was absolutely maddening. You have to get over this massive cavern by jumping on moving platforms that don't have a reliable pattern. Sometimes if you take too long to make a move, they won't come back your way at all, which goes back to what I said about playing confidently and not hesitating. And the platforms also shoot at you, note the knockback physics, and if that's not enough, flying enemies show up halfway through it. The magnet beam, for me anyway, was mandatory to get past it. So I hope you went to Elecman's stage before this one, but even then, it's a double-edged sword. If you're using the magnet beam to help yourself cross, you're unable to use any of your weapons against the kamikaze penguins. After getting through all of that, Iceman himself isn't hard at all, especially if you're using the correct weapon. The hardest part of the Gutsman stage for me, beyond all doubt, was this absolute monkey shit at the very beginning. The rest of it, including the boss, was very easy. All around, I find the toughest of the initial stages to be Fireman, as the challenge is high both within the level itself and against the boss. Fireman's projectiles seemed impossible to dodge to me. Maybe I just wasn't able to learn a good strategy, so I found myself relying on using the correct weapon and on my post-hit invincibility. In my experience, easily the toughest of the 6 Robot Masters. Once you've beaten the initial 6 stages, which are all in all pretty manageable as long as you're persistent, you get to move on to the lengthy and multi-part Dr. Wily stage, which requires mastery of every skill you've learned playing the game so far. As it should. But like the 6 initial stages, it is also plagued by uneven difficulty. The very first thing you see is this big jumping enemy that deals a ton of damage and has no pattern. The best strategy is using the Ice Slasher to freeze it in midair. Any other method is unreliable in my experience, because even if you can land enough hits to blow him up, he'll just respawn at the edge of the screen if he's able to drive you far enough backward, like I previously explained when talking about the game's lack of polish. The first boss you meet in Dr. Wily's stage is the infamous Yellow Devil. For many, this was the de facto end of the game, because they were never able to beat him. I believe that this boss alone is the single biggest reason why Mega Man has such a reputation for being difficult. Because that Yellow Devil is one bad son of a bitch. I've always thought this boss didn't look very hard, but until I played it, I had no clue what a test of memory, pattern recognition, and reflexes it truly was. It's hard enough to dodge his attacks as he disassembles and reassembles himself across the room, but on top of it, you only get a tiny window of time to hit his only weakness, the eyeball, which spawns each time in a different spot. Missing your window right after surviving another round of reassembly is soul-crushing. If I had an unlimited amount of cracks at him, rather than being forced to restart the whole stage every time I lost all of my lives, I think I could have powered through without cheating, because I noticed myself getting better as I tried again and again. Having to go back was so demoralizing, though. And what sucked even more was when I'd waste a life while replaying the stage because I was trying to rush. The flying platform nonsense directly before him makes the similar part of the Iceman stage look like a picnic, because instead of a bottomless pit of doom, there's instead insta-kill death spikes on both the bottom and top. Again, sometimes the platforms make outright refusals, so you can't screw around with them. Anyway, the way to cheat against the Yellow Devil is to spam the pause button right as your Thunder Beam connects with the eye. The game will glitch into hitting every time it's unpaused. I honestly felt bad taking the easy route, as I believe that conquering him the legit way would have made me feel very proud of my achievement. Next time I play, there will be no cheating, and I'll either get past him or I won't. I went with the cheese this time just in the interest of ensuring I get to see the rest of the game in order to get this video made. The remaining bosses after the Yellow Devil are nowhere near as memorable. There's this floating piece of machinery, which I couldn't really figure out how to dodge, so I just brute forced my way through it. The fight against the clone is pretty fun though. No weapon has a clear advantage since he's always using the same one. I finished it off with the Thunder Beam since it's simultaneously easy to aim with and easy to dodge. The tricky part of this fight is getting yourself mixed up with your clone. Dr. Wily is of course the final boss, and as the final example of uneven difficulty, he is arguably the easiest boss in the entire game. Even if he's not the absolute easiest, he's a massive pushover compared to the Yellow Devil, and definitely not as challenging as some of the boss rushes you have to do against the Robot Masters in the Wily stages. Directly before Wily, you have to tear through Bomb Man, Fireman, Iceman, and Gutsman, all on one health bar. As an aside, another random thing I like about this game is that even if you take out a boss, you still have to dodge any remaining projectiles, and can even still be killed by them. A point of realism in a game about humanoid robots fighting each other over who will get to guide civilization forward for the foreseeable future. Mega Man is fun as hell. It shouldn't have taken me so long to say this, but I guess I just got tangled up with all of the details that come in when you're reviewing a game, and I lost sight of the forest due to all of the trees. Because a game being fun to play is the thing that matters most. This right here is 8-bit action platforming euphoria. Running and jumping your way through creatively designed levels, shooting shit, dodging obstacles, fighting a boss, rinsing and repeating. Does it get any better than this? I doubt it. This tried and true concept also has some idiosyncrasies added, in the form of the stage select function and weapon pillaging. It has character and atmosphere. I love the retro future towers in the background of Bomb Man's stage. The music is consistently good, although it would get even better in the sequel. The performance does suffer a little when there are a lot of sprites on screen, but not in a way that's out of the ordinary on the NES. And outside of that damn Yellow Devil, the difficulty is actually pretty manageable, although uneven, so don't let its reputation as a hard game scare you away. Even if you fail miserably at it, you'll probably still have a good time stage hopping due to the innovative way the game is organized. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider giving a thumbs up and subscribing. And ring that there bell to make sure that you get notified of future videos. This has been a Leaky Faucet review. I hope to see you again.